We're specializing in the commercial real estate market. That's what we've been doing since the start of our real estate career. So we focus in office buildings, in marketing and leasing office projects within the Metro Manila area. And the people behind the company are the people that I've worked with for the last 10 years, more than 10 years, some of them. And our specialization is always in the commercial real estate market. We know the Philippine real estate market well. This is what we've been doing since 2008. And we want to stay in this segment because it's what we know, it's what we're good at.
We build lasting relationships and achieve mutually beneficial goals. We surpass our clients' expectations and our employees enjoy a high performance culture anchored on continuous learning, we foster nation building through ethical and socially responsible business practices.
Imagine a world where with one touch, you're transported to paradise, where everything is integrated and you can now spend more time on what's important. Imagine townships that make everything closer, closer to where you need to be and where you want to be. Imagine a world where with a touch of your fingertips, you're able to work and innovate with the best and the brightest. Or what if the company you have is the best at throwing parties? With smooth interconnectivity, it feels as if they're just around the corner. Anything intertwined closely, everything interconnected. Luckily, we no longer need to imagine because our townships are already here. Megaworld is constantly looking ahead in building sustainable townships and integrated lifestyle communities from Metro Manila, the key cities, and to the countryside. Here in Megaworld, the perfect home is just one touch away. We don't just build your homes, we help you build your future.
Wala talagang cause and effect relationship. Even before itong naglabasan itong mga cell sites, mga cellular phones, meron ng cancer eh. So, how can we be sure na ito talaga yung pinanggagalingan?
Cell site, we could transmit all of the results of all of our state-of-the-art equipment to the US, Europe, etc., so that we can consult with other doctors internationally using the internet. If it's a life or death situation for patients alone, and if our doctors can't be contacted for consultation, then it may mean someone's life. How many cases do you know about of someone getting cancer from a cell site? At this point, even in the US or in Europe, hindi pa rin proven that it causes cancer. These cell sites, I don't believe they do. If that's the case, we would all have cancer because there are so many cell types around. I don't believe they should be afraid of cell types. If that's the case, we already should have had market increase in cancer cases. If that's the case, and we do have a cancer unit, and most of the cancer cases we have are not due, or actually all of the cancer cases we have are not due to cell phone or to internet use.
Kung ang hospital may cell site, ibig sabihin nito, hindi sila naniniwala na nagpo-cause nga ito ng mga malignancies o yung relationship ng radiation signal from cell sites at saka pagkakaroon ng cancer, hindi sila naniniwala. Benefit na ibibigay sa kanila, especially dun sa mga diagnostic at mga laboratory examinations na kailangan nilang makita right then and there.
Guys, can we begin? Let's start with the national anthem.
We're specializing in the commercial real estate market. That's what we've been doing since the start of our real estate career. So we focus in office buildings, in marketing and leasing office projects within the Metro Manila area. And the people behind the company are the people that I've worked with for the last 10 years, more than 10 years, some of them. And our specialization is always in the commercial real estate market. We know the Philippine real estate market well. This is what we've been doing since 2008. And we want to stay in this segment because it's what we know, it's what we're good at.
We build lasting relationships and achieve mutually beneficial goals. We surpass our clients' expectations, and our employees enjoy a high-performance culture anchored on continuous learning. We foster nation building through ethical and socially responsible business practices.
isang silanganan. Halan ng puso, sa litim mo'y buhay. Lupang hinirang, duyan ka ng magiting. Sa manluluti, di ka pasisiil. Sa dagatang tungkol sa simulan. Sa langit mong bughaw, may nilagang pula. Ang awit sa paglayang inahal. Ang isip ng watawat, pitag-ibay na nagniningning. Ang bituin at araw niya kailan pa may di magniningning. Parang araw ng walhati pupunta, buhay namin sa pinto. At di kaya na pag may mga atin ang pumatay ng dahil sa'yo.
Honorable Carl Kendrick Chua, Acting Secretary of NEDA. The Honorable Ahmed Moti, the Chief Executive Officer of Pag-Ibig Fund. Ms. Sheila Lobien, Chief Executive Officer of the Lobien Realty Group Incorporated and Chairperson of the Women in Business Committee of the European Chamber. My colleagues at the Manila Times, the country's news source of choice and trusted since 1898. Viewers joining us today on Facebook, YouTube, and on our website, www.manilatimes.net. Good morning and welcome to the first virtual forum of the Times, business as usual under the new normal. The banner story of our paper today is about the palace announcement that Metro Manila will transition to a general community quarantine on June 1. With the lingering presence of COVID-19, the country, along with the capital region, is eager for the economy to reopen even more. Even as we have said in our editorials, the pandemic has both a health aspect and an economic one. The often mentioned line, referring to the coronavirus cases, may have flattened, but the economic toll is now coming into full view. Unemployment may reach 10%. It would not surprise us if it reaches an all-time high. Many businesses will not reopen even when the modified enhanced community quarantine is lifted, and more businesses are on the brink of bankruptcy. OFWs have been displaced, threatening the key driver of the economy, the remittances that represent about 10% of the GDP. These modern-day heroes are being repatriated in the tens of thousands. In fact, the Philippine economy is likely to see a contraction for the year. I could go on, but you all get the point. After more than 2 months under lockdown, no Philippine enterprise has been spared. Even the Manila Times, which has thrived on organizing business fora on various relevant issues, has moved from packed ballrooms into the virtual world. This is just one example of the new normal. Of course, the economy around the world has a similar theme. More than the present challenges, our thoughts are about the future, about how we can survive and overcome this twin crisis. Understandably, many others are wondering the same thing. This is why we have invited speakers today to talk about the economic landscape, the new norms it will compel society to observe, and hopefully to hear from them ideas and plans and progress for our recovery. Before we begin, allow me to express our appreciation to our co-sponsors, the Lobien Realty Group, Mega World, and SM, as well as our sponsors, Globe, Pag-Ibig Fund, and SunTrust, and our media partner, the Manila Times TV. Thank you also to our business columnist, Ben Kritz. Good morning, Ben, who will help me host today's forum. So without further delay, allow me to introduce our first speaker, Acting NEDA Secretary Chua.
Thank you very much. Are you introducing me or can I start?
Yes, can I say a little something, Secretary?
Sure, please. Please
Okay.
do. Thank you.
So prior to his appointment as National Economic Development Authority's Acting Secretary, Dr. Carl Kendrick Chua was Undersecretary of the Department of Finance for Strategy, Economics, and Results Group. Before joining the government, he was a senior country economist of the World Bank for the Philippines, whose work focused on tax policy and administration, public expenditure management, macroeconomic management, statistical development, and labor policy. He completed his MA in economics in 2003 and PhD in economics in 2011 at the University of the Philippines. He was a lecturer of mathematics and economics at the Ateneo de Manila University, where he finished his BS Management Engineering in 2000. Amid the COVID-19 pandemic, his top three priorities are to fast-track the national ID system, the economic recovery plan, and the continuance of the Build, Build, Build program. Ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome NED Acting Secretary Dr. Carl Kendrick Chua.
Thank you very much, Dante and everyone. Good morning. First of all, I hope you are all taking very good care of yourselves. This is once in a century that we are having this very difficult situation. And I would like to, of course, right now, share the thinking of the government as we prepare our recovery program. Let me first share my screen. So my presentation today will be a very short version of what we call the Philippine Progreso, or the Philippine Program for Recovery with Equity and Solidarity. The basic idea here is to turn this crisis into an opportunity. And in the past, we have seen the resiliency of the Philippines in turning past crises, like the financial crisis in 1998 to strengthen the financial system, the fiscal crisis in 2004 to strengthen our fiscal management, and even the slightly higher inflation in 2018 when we were able to pass the rice tariffication law. So in the same way that we have been accustomed to turning crisis into opportunity, I think this present COVID crisis provides us the window of opportunity to make significant changes that will make a lasting difference in the country. I would like to first start by sharing with you some facts about the Philippines as we entered 2020. We entered 2020 with one of the brightest growth prospects in the region and in the world, if I may say. We have been building on past economic reforms and macroeconomic management to do better and to prepare ourselves. We were, prior to COVID, one of the fastest growing economies, averaging 6.6% GDP growth. We were likely to become upper middle income country after waiting for 30 years with per capita of 3512 dollars. And this will put us at the same league as China, Malaysia, and Thailand. Inflation has been low and stable. Because of the reforms and the Build, Build, Build program, we have seen the lowest ever unemployment, underemployment, and poverty rates in our history. We promised actually to lift 6 million Filipinos out of poverty by 2022. We actually achieved that in 2018 when the poverty rate fell from 23 to 17%. Our fiscal position as we entered 2020 was the strongest since 1997. And our debt to GDP ratio also the lowest in recorded history since 86 when we started recording this in a systematic way. Our reserves are $89 billion worth. We can pay 7.9 months of imports. Typically, the IMF would require us only 3 months. And as a result of all of these, the international credit rating agencies have rated us BBB+, which is one notch below the A rating. What that basically means is we are considered low risk, and therefore we can borrow at lower interest rate. If we are to borrow 1 trillion peso, the credit rating we have saves us around 1% of the interest rate. And that means we have 10 billion pesos more per year. Instead of paying that to the creditors, we can use that to fund our social services or the infrastructure. And the reason why we were able to do this is because we have been very conservative and responsible in managing the fiscal position. Not only this administration, but the preceding ones. We have passed 4 tax reform laws. There are 3 more to go. We have done structural reforms, notably rice tariffication. So can you all imagine how it would be right now to come into 2020 with the COVID pandemic crisis without having passed any of the tax reform? We would have no money or savings to provide support to the healthcare workers and the poor. Imagine also if we did not pass rice tarification, rice prices would still be 10 peso per kilogram more expensive compared to today. And we also did, of course, the Build program, which is providing additional employment and reducing poverty at a much faster pace. Unfortunately, all this good news has been put to a halt by three unexpected shocks of increasing magnitude: Taal volcano, the global pandemic, and our decision to impose ECQ because our priority was to save lives. So this is, ladies and gentlemen, the picture of the Philippines today. We have responded in the government with a four-pillar strategy. We have put 1.74 trillion into the economy, 595 billion to the poor and workers through the social amelioration program and the wage subsidy primarily. We have put 58 billion to help the frontliners and the healthcare workers fight COVID. We have raised 1 trillion at least from both fiscal and monetary policy action to provide liquidity to the government and to the banks so that we can help the people and the businesses. And we are preparing right now the recovery program where it will be largely funded by Pillar 3. So this is where we are as of May 18. And we are ready actually to support the people. We are not collecting much taxes, but we are in a very good position to borrow in a very sustainable manner. The Economist magazine last May 2 rated the Philippines as number 6 most strong in financial resiliency out of 66 countries. We are ahead actually in Southeast Asia, ahead of Thailand, Malaysia, Vietnam, and Indonesia. And this is a testament to our solid macroeconomic management. So in general, we come into this crisis with a very good prospects. Unfortunately, this is a global crisis, a global pandemic, the first since 1918, and no one really knows, I think, who is alive today, how it was in the 1918 flu pandemic. So while our macroeconomic fundamentals are very strong, our macro fiscal framework has actually weakened, and we admit this. In 2019, GDP growth was 6%. Today, we are expecting the economy to become smaller actually, contracting by 2 to 3.4%. Our nominal GDP, which was 19.5 trillion last year, will become 19.3 trillion. Not a big drop, but still something we should be concerned about. The revenue all-time high of 16.1% of GDP has gone down to 13.6, primarily because we are not collecting taxes. We have postponed and deferred a lot of the taxes in the last 3 months. Our expenditure has actually increased from 19.5 to 21.7%, and this is basically our way to stimulate the economy. As a result, the deficit has increased almost 3 times, from 3.4 to 8.1%. And we were programming originally 3.2%. We can accommodate up to 9% without harming our fiscal sustainability. Our debt to GDP, an all-time low of 39.6%, will become 49.8%. This is moderate. Compare that to 2003 when it was almost 80% of GDP. So in summary, we are coming into 2020 mid-year with a much weakened fiscal framework, but our fundamentals are still strong, and we intend to capitalize on this opportunity to improve further our prospects. We have conducted a survey. We listened to 389,000 people, 44,000 micro, small, and medium enterprise, and 6,000 plus farmers. And this survey was conducted at the start of the ECQ. We are doing one in May and another one in June. And based on this survey, we were able to find out that the impact on the economy in terms of income is not very good. 44% of consumers say income is not enough. There was a 87.2% drop in revenues. The estimate total is 767 billion as of April. 66% of firms had zero sales, 33% decreased sales. Farmers, 65% were able to sell, 35% were not able to sell because of the various quarantines and lockdowns. In terms of job loss, 44% of non-government workers say they did not work. In terms of the private sector, 2.2 million workers say they could not work or were laid off, but 86% of farmers continue to farm. 33 out of the 44,000 firms, 33,000 out of 44,000 firms had to close down, and this was intentional and out of the ECQ policy. And 35% were not able to sell among farmers. And when we ask them how we can help them, the people say they want food access, more efficient health system, and transport. And this is something that we are trying to provide, especially to the frontliners and to those who are in essential business. In the business sector, they actually told us that they want deferment of government, bank, and utility payments. And there are many of these that have been actually implemented under Bayanihan 1. We are not collecting taxes. We are not collecting interest on interest. We are not collecting loan payments. We are not collecting rentals. They ask for tax discounts. Later, I will show you what we are thinking about giving everyone a tax incentive. And they want low interest loans. So we have actually released a lot of liquidity to the banks. And the farmers want cash assistance, production support, and machinery. So in summary, we are very aware of the problem of the people. And through our surveys, we intend to listen to them and calibrate our recovery program along the lines of the requests needed. Now, let me now go to our phased and adaptive recovery approach. We started in March in an emergency situation where the patient called the Philippines is intubated in the ICU. And we have had Bayanihan 1 to support the poor, the workers, and the healthcare workers. Right now, we are seeing a lot of the country emerging from ECQ to modified ECQ or the GCQ. And we are now preparing with Congress the recovery stage. And initially, we have proposed the Bayanihan 2 and the CREATE, but there are now some adjustments, which I will explain later. So the analogy here is a patient called the Philippines is now recovering, has been put in the regular room of the hospital, and is being given dextrose. And we intend to support the country through a number of measures, which I will explain later. And finally, as we enter 2021, we are going to plan for a more healthy and resilient Philippines. The analogy here is the patient called the Philippines has been allowed to go home and must take vitamins. And we will make sure that all our policy and reforms will be aligned towards this new and hopefully better normal. So now let me go to the details of the recovery stage. This presentation is as of a few days ago. Today we hear from Congress some developments. So instead of just 3 bills, the spending and capital support will now be 3 bills. There is the extension of the Bayanihan 2, and there is the FIST, and there is the guide. Let me explain that later. Number 2 is the tax incentives under the CREATE. And the third one is the 2021 General Appropriations Act preparation. So let me first begin. We propose that the Bayanihan 2.1 be extended. This is the simplest mode because with that we are able to have flexibility to move money and funds to where they are most needed. And we will do so by reallocating and reprioritizing savings and other budget items to meet our health and recovery needs. Now, one of the important aspects of this recovery program is to stimulate domestic demand. We saw in the first quarter that GDP growth was minus 0.2 and private consumption grew only by 0.2 when in fact it should grow by 5 or 6% given our fast-growing consumer economy. So the first thing we need to do is to put money and jobs back to the people. We will do this by number 1, providing support to the healthcare system, because when people feel that it is safe to go out, they will go out and work. If they don't trust the healthcare system, then they will not go out. Number 2, we will put also money to support the entire food value chain so that the most basic necessity is going to be secured. And many micro, small, and medium enterprise are working around the food value chain. then we will restart the most impactful build projects. Now, the way we prioritize the build is that we first be realistic about the available money or fiscal space. Then we look at which projects in the 100 flagship projects, for instance, are ready, and we look at the impact on economic growth. And we will choose those that are most ready within budget and with a lasting impact to restore jobs. And we hope the private sector is ready to support us, and we hope that we are also able to make adjustment to include more health and digital economy projects. Now, under the FIS and the guide, the FIS basically is the one that provides support to the financial sector to help them dispose bad assets or loans, like a special purpose vehicle. The guide is basically to infuse capital to some of our GFIs and the field guarantee to allow them to serve more and more clients. So in general, what we want here is to provide liquidity to the banks and to the firms to prevent an insolvency problem. And by doing this, we actually expand the scope of our support. Because, for instance, if you give 1 billion peso out of the budget, it is only 1 billion peso. But if you give 1 billion peso to the banks can leverage that 8.5 times, multiply that, and provide loans not only for 1 billion peso, but 8.5 billion peso. Now, if you give 1 billion peso to field guarantee, that can be leveraged 20 times. So instead of just helping 1 billion peso worth of clients, you can help 20 billion pesos. So that is the idea of this support or capital support to the banks and to the firms. And we are cognizant that there are different types of firms. The micro firms typically borrow from the microfinance, co-op banks, rural banks, and thrift banks. What we intend to do here is that we will ask Land Bank and DBP to become wholesale bankers. We will provide them some capital so that they can buy the loans of the smaller banks and the co-op banks and the microfinance, so that it frees up their money to provide even more loans or low interest loans to their clients. Now, for small and medium firms, what we will provide is a credit guarantee through field guarantee, where at least 50% of the loans of SMEs will be guaranteed by the government. So this will allow banks to be more open and take a bit more risk. We will also be ready with wage subsidy as needed. And finally, for the large firms, we are proposing the creation of a time-bound joint venture with our government financial institutions and the private sector to provide targeted time-bound equity infusion to the bigger firms that are strategic to match whatever bank will be lending them. But there will be conditions. For instance, they cannot pay dividends, they cannot increase their executive pay, they cannot spend on luxury or representation, and so on. So these are in the plans right now. Finally, we have the tax incentives called CREATE, which is a repackaged version of our CITIRA, or the Corporate Income Tax and Incentives Reform Act. And we will give all firms, all small, non-large, all firms, rather, a lower corporate income tax rate from 30 to 25% immediately starting July 2020. And we will extend the net operating loss carryover for the small firms, not the non-large firms, up to 5 years, so that their losses today, they can credit it to their future tax payment. For new investors, we will actively seek them out, give them tailor-fitted incentives. For existing investors, we will not change anything for the first 4 to 9 years, so they can adjust, and after that, they can apply again. For the countryside investors, we will give more in support of the Balik Probinsya Bagong Pag-asa program. And in all of these, the FIRB, or the Fiscal Incentives Review Board, will be the one to decide, manage, and improve the governance of the incentives so that they are given performance-based, targeted, time-bound, and transparent. And finally, related to that is that the 2021 GAA preparation will be aligned with our new normal, so that we have a way to continue supporting our people and the healthcare system as we transition through this crisis. Now, finally, I'd like to just spend a few minutes talking about the resiliency stage. The resiliency stage, we have two instruments, the budget and the structural reforms. And we intend to align the last 2 years of this administration to making the Philippines much stronger to address any shocks in the future. Unfortunately, we know that we will get some crisis or global shock every 10 years because of the Asian financial crisis in 98, the global financial crisis in 2009. We were actually very ready to face such a crisis because the global economy was slowing down and there was a trade war. But no one thought that this crisis would be in the form of a virus, an invisible enemy. So now we have to rethink everything that we do. So what are we thinking? First, we will prioritize build digital infrastructure, health, housing, water, and sanitation. All of these are the basic foundations of a new normal. And we will put a bit more money in the budget to support all these and some more flexibility so that at any given time, if there is a second wave, for instance, or a third wave, we can respond to that immediately. The next one is we are proposing a number of structural reforms to make our healthcare sector stronger. For instance, the hospitals, the pharma-grade medical supplies, inventory of strategic equipment, virology center, a pharma development center. In agriculture, we want to put more money in productivity enhancement. We want everything to be digitalized in the government. So hopefully in the coming years, no one will need to go to a government office to transact. Everything will be online. We want to pass the 3 economic liberalization bills, including the amendment to the Public Service Act. And we also want to improve the ease of credit and Industry 4.0. So all of these don't really cost too much money, but they can radically make the economy much stronger and can provide new opportunities for growth. Then we are going to focus on education, social protection, labor, public transport, logistics, and disaster response to include virus or health-related disaster response. So all of these are what we propose to do in the next 12 months. Some of them are easy to do, some are more difficult, but we think these are the basic elements for us to be able to survive and do better in the new normal. So with that, I would like to end. Thank you very much for your time. I look forward to your questions.
Thank you, Secretary. Ben, would you like to start asking questions? Yes.
Yeah, there we go. Hi, good morning.
Good morning, Ben.
We're still learning how to do this the new way. And it's good that we are because it seems like we're going to be doing this a lot from now on. I have a couple of questions that come immediately to mind. One of the things I've been sitting here doing as I've been watching your discussion is following along the comments on our FB Live feed. There's quite a few people that are watching in. Hello, everybody, and thank you for joining us. And one of the big issues that keeps coming up with the people here is they concern about transportation. What they have in mind right now for June 1st is got a lot of people concerned that they're not going to be able to make it to work. Is basically what it comes down to. So, where do you stand on that? I know, some of the things that you're discussing with the BBB program and everything are going to address those a little farther down the line. But what do we do about getting people back to work quickly? Because I think one of the big problems with rebuilding the economy is the huge decline in demand. People are not spending as much, and even if they wanted to, they can't spend as much under the conditions we have now, and that's going to go on for quite a while. It may get a little easier, but it's not going to get back to what it was before. So how do you kickstart the whole thing? Give it an initial big shock so that it really gets rolling.
Thank you, Ben. As the capital, for instance, transition to GCQ, and that would depend if we meet the health conditions in June or maybe July, we are mindful that the people will have to travel to work. And there are minimum standards for public transport. And I won't go to the details, But in general, capacity cannot be the usual 100%. In some transport, it is 50%. In some, it is less, 25%. Under the GCQ, what we are proposing actually is that only the essential workforce go to work. And for services, they are highly encouraged not to go 100% to the office. 50% will have to stay home. Classes and schools will not be open yet at that time. So there is a gradual transition. Those catering to tourism and leisure are not allowed to open yet under the GCQ. So there is a balancing that we are doing. We don't have all the public transport ready, but we are also not allowing the entire population to go out. So that should alleviate pressure on the public transport system in the immediate term. The second one is we highly encourage the private sector to provide shuttles for their employees and to house them closer to the offices. The reason for this is if you take a public transport, you don't really know who your seatmates are. And that is the best way to transmit the virus. And we will be spending a lot in contact tracing. But if the people you are sitting with, for instance, through a shuttle, are your workmates or people you can easily trace, then that would be better for us. Now, of course, in the medium term, as I mentioned in my presentation, we have to revisit the entire public transport system. There will be cases wherein we will have to totally shift to other forms of transport. Bicycles, for instance. Today, there is a hearing in the Senate, several bills looking into shifting half of the population on bicycles, for instance. So these are the things that we are doing, and this is going to be a gradual transition. I don't admit to have a solution to everything, but this is a phased and adaptive process that we are doing, and we will adjust accordingly. But the priority here is really to take care of everyone's health and not to create another second or third wave. Thank you.
Thank you, Secretary. First of all, let me say that we don't envy your position right now. You come in to this responsibility at a very trying times. And I was wondering, sir, if you can elaborate on what you mentioned earlier about the wage subsidies to SMEs. I believe you said this was going to be done through Fill Guarantee. I think you hit the nail in the head when you said that people are complaining about not having enough resources or money to meet their basic needs, and really the key there is to put people back to work. And understandably, the Philippines and all other countries in the world right now are struggling with high unemployment. I noticed in the UK they had qualifications to apply for these loans.
Thank you, Dante. First of all, we actually started already with providing wage subsidies, and
Yes.
as of this week, we are close to providing 3.4 million employees of small businesses through the social security system, they're 5,000 to 8,000 peso per month. And we are actually starting the second tranche. That is costing us 51 billion peso for 2 months. And the idea here is while we are ready to provide more, this has to be done in a very targeted manner. Nowadays, everyone needs support. Everyone would need a subsidy or an allowance. But the truth is, this money do not come free from heaven, as if you just open your door and something money falls from heaven. These are taken from tax payments of our people. And if we don't have enough taxes, we borrow, but we ask our children and grandchildren to pay for that. So we will have to provide the wage subsidy in a very targeted manner. Now, apart from the wage subsidy, there are two major ways that are being prepared right now to help small businesses. The first one is the credit guarantee. When a small business would require working capital, they go to the bank. The bank will lend them based on their appreciation of the borrower or the business's profile. Now, since nowadays is a risky time to be lending, what the government is willing to do is to provide a credit guarantee through our Fill Guarantee, where at least 50% of the loan is guaranteed by the government. So it is basically the bank and the government sharing the responsibility. in helping the clients who deserve it. Now, the third one is we understand that many firms, especially the small ones, are incurring a lot of losses. The revenues have collapsed, but the spending or expenditure,
Continues.
particularly for the loans or rental, continues. Now, we are thankful that some of the large businesses and the landlords have waived or suspended the rental, which is good. But the thing is, if there are further losses, we allow them to carry over the losses. So if they lost, let's say, 100, let's say if they lost 100 million collectively this year, they can carry over that in the following year. So those are the programs that we are preparing right now.
Ben?
Okay, I have two questions. Businesses develop the digital capability to have half of their workforce stay home, or to purchase transportation so they can move their own people around. Is that an idea that you've thought of, or you can take a look at, to help get this thing rolling a little quicker? That's my first question. And then my second question is more a macroeconomic question. So why don't you hit me with that one first?
Well, yes, we are. We are. In fact, the two major priorities going forward is really around health and the digital economy. But I invite businesses also to think about the trade-off. When people work from home, you don't really have to pay much on water or electricity. You can cut down on your rental. So there are trade-offs. So it's not as if the government should provide everything to support the new normal. So we also ask the businesses to also consider what are areas of in the business that are not needed anymore, and what are the various ways to improve productivity. So I would suggest that to all businesses to think similar to us. The two principles that I want everyone to think about as we recover from this crisis is, first, nothing is free from heaven, which I explained. And the second is, everything is a trade-off. I don't have an infinite amount of money to provide and help each sector. I have to weigh them and give it to the most deserving or hardest hit sector. In the same way, businesses, you are always squeezed by lower sales and higher expense, and that is and the only way out of that is productivity enhancement.
Thank you, Secretary. If it permit me, there are some people watching us on Facebook who sent us some questions. There is a question here from Michela de la Torre, and that is, how do we deal with companies who do not have a work from home policy but are part of the essential sector?
Well, for instance, those in the food sector, of course, you cannot work from home. And that is why we are prioritizing the public transport, for instance, for them. We are also looking at the possibility of having more electronic or e-commerce transaction for the essential sector. In fact, I'll just share, in my condo, every other day there is a person who brings fresh vegetables and fruits and sells them. Outside my condo, every week there is what do you call it, a mobile market. So we all have to think of new ways of providing the service. That's basically my point. Either you do it electronically, like have it delivered, or you provide a village or community markets. So those are the things we need to think about.
Just incidentally, Secretary, have you guys done some role playing here? I know that we're going into GCQ by June, and we're doing that in spite of the fact that there is a remaining threat from this pandemic. And even the epidemiologists in the US are saying that come fall, that with the start of the flu season, there may be even more cases reported. I mean, how much more shock can we take? And what the vaccine development will probably not come to fruition until next year. I mean, at the latest. So, what is the worst case scenario that you guys are are discussing now, and then what can be done to mitigate those?
Okay, thank you, Dante. The first thing I wanted to say is when we imposed the ECQ, there was a lot of science that went into that. When we were deciding whether to lift that, also a lot of science went into that. We had 5 modelers who provided inputs to the government with their various epidemiological models. And there are basically 2 factors that are being considered here. The first is the case doubling time, and the second is the critical care utilization rate. Those 2 have to be in orange for us to move from ECQ to GCQ. And that will be the decision framework that will be used to decide if Metro Manila, for instance, will move to GCQ in June. Because of the decision to impose ECQ, we actually saved more than 100,000 lives, according to our modelers. And practically everyone would have been infected if we did nothing, all 12 million in Metro Manila. And we will continue to make a decision based on this. The worst case is that we try to rush and open the economy and the virus comes back, a second or a third wave, and basically destroys all the gains that we have seen. So far, I think we are managing that very well. We have increased our testing potential to 30,000 tests per day. The actual is much lower because there are laboratories that still lack supplies, but we have that potential and we will reach that potential. I understand if we are able to test 17,000 per day at least, where we are more or less there today, then we can gradually open up the economy. Now, how much more we can take depends on 2 things. One, the proactive policy of the government to manage the situation despite the very difficult trade-offs. And second, the cooperation of every one of you listening in staying at home and doing your basic responsibility of wearing a mask and washing hands. I think 90% of the time you can fight the virus by doing those basic things. Now, if you don't do them, then you add to the problem.
Yeah, I think Ben is adding to our problem. He's not wearing a mask, and he's working with some of my colleagues.
Yes,
very good.
Yes, but I am always
I think,
prepared.
2 meters, 2 meters away
Yes,
would be sufficient.
as I am, unfortunately, in one of the high risk groups, and so are you, boss. So, we have to watch it. I just want to follow up real quick. Clint kind of caught part of my question there, but what I wanted to ask you in particular is in the figures you gave us earlier, you're looking at about a 49.8% debt to GDP ratio, which is under that magic 50% level. So that's good. You're looking at about 8.1%. Versus 9% as a limit on the deficit. I'm just curious, do those figures take into account the possibility of a second wave and possibly a case where we have to go back into, a tighter lockdown for a period of time, or is that kind of an optimistic, you're hoping things will continue the way they're continuing now?
Thank you. This is a conservative estimate. And it includes some of the possible risks that we are facing in the near future. But the other thing I wanted to say is this is extremely uncertain times. The only thing that we can manage right now is the policies, the proactive policies to contain or to mitigate the impact of the virus. That is why we imposed ECQ immediately. Actually, we were one of the first countries to do so in a very full manner. We immediately, in one day, historically, passed the Bayanihan 1, and that is providing more than almost 600 billion peso worth of support to the healthcare sector and to the people. So a lot of that, I think, whether the recovery will be V-shaped, W-shaped, or a long U-shape, hinges on our proactive policy. And we will continue to do that. The second is because we are not sure about everything, our approach, as I showed in my presentation, is it has to be phased and adaptive. And that is why one of the things we wanted is to simply extend the Bayanihan into buy. We are in the median, not the best nor the worst, but responsive to the needs of the economy. I think this will be seen positively by credit raters and the investors.
Secretary, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I know we're running out of time, but if you'd allow me, there's one more question from
Sure.
our Facebook viewer. This comes from Brenda Canonero, and the question is: how do you think the real estate business will perform this post-pandemic?
Well, part of our economy in the last, I should say, more than 10 years have been driven by the real estate sector. And like any market, there is a supply and a demand. And the best way for the market to work is to respect supply and demand. In the past, you have seen the prices rising so fast. Demand is rising so fast. Supply cannot keep up, and so I think this is one opportunity for the market to adjust. I have heard small businessmen and some BPO saying that they cannot even find space in the business centers, or the prices have gone up so high. So my take on this is there is a market. It is based on supply and demand. Prices rise and fall to reflect and equalize supply and demand. So let's respect markets. Let's not speculate or the real estate market is not a market, should not be a speculative market. It should be a market that will match supply and demand.
Thank you, Secretary. If I may be permitted, just the final question.
Sure.
In your presentation earlier, you said that using the analogy of a patient, the Philippines will be sent home and will be taking vitamins by 2021. Is that the earliest we can see a recovery, and between now and then, and things will remain fluid?
We have released already our Development Budget Coordination Committee, or the DBCC, which is the Economic Manager's Macroeconomic Framework, which shows a recovery of 8% next year from our contraction of 3.4% this year. Of course, that hinges, we are not crystal readers in government. We do not look up the ceiling. We have a model.
Right.
It is based on assumptions and policy. So let's work together to implement those policies proactively to get the desired outcome that we want.
Thank you, Secretary. One of those policies: wear masks, Ben. Wear masks when you're working with people. Thank you very much, Secretary. Any final words you'd like to say? Parting words?
Well, I just want to thank you, Dante, Ben, and Manila Times. I understand you have had a history of supporting the government's reform. So thank you for that. I hope you continue to support. Help the government convey to the public actually what is the reality. Nowadays, we are, I think, focusing too much on social media, and sometimes the news spreads so fast that we are not sure if they are of sound basis. So I think the role of media and everyone is to check the facts, also share the good news, and contribute to solutions, not just to complain about some problems. So I hope this would be a very good mentality that we can all share so that we can move this country forward. So with that, thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Thank
we
you.
have a lot more questions, but I know you're very busy, but we appreciate the time you've given us today. Thank you very much, Secretary.
Thank you very much.
you.
Take care, everyone.
Thank you. All right. At this point, we'd like to move on to our next speaker, and that is the Chief Executive Officer of the Pag-Ibig Fund, Mr. Ahmed Grizelda Moti. Mr. Moti, if you don't mind, I'd like to read a short introduction.
Sure. Thank you.
Mr. Moti is the 12th Chief Executive Officer of the Pag-Ibig Fund, which is known for leading the agency in leading record highs in housing, loan releases, collections generated, and net income, while delivering the Lingkod Pag-Ibig brand of service, tapat na serbisyo mula sa puso, all for the benefits of its more than 14 million members. Mr. Moti began his career at Pag-Ibig Fund as a Senior Vice President for the Information Technology Services sector in 2008. Due to his track record, he was asked to lead the Home Leading Operations Cluster in 2011. Under his watch, the Home Development Mutual Fund, HDMF, measured its topmost housing loan takeout and augmented its performing loans ratio. In March 2017, he was given full control of the Pag-Ibig Fund's operations as officer in charge. Barely 3 months at the helm, he was officially appointed as CEO by President Rodrigo Duterte himself on May 26. He finished his BS Computer Science degree from the University of the Philippines in 1995 and completed his master's in 2000, where he also began his professional career as a faculty member. He started his banking career with Asia United Bank, AUB, then became vice president for China Trust Philippines Commercial Bank Corporation, where he managed the software development and maintenance group before joining Pag-Ibig Fund. Ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome Pag-Ibig Fund CEO, Mr. Ahmed Moti. Mr. Moti?
Yes. Good morning, everyone. And thank you so much, Manila Times, especially to you, our good friend, Mr. Klink, for giving me this opportunity to join this online forum. So maybe if we can show the slides. All right. So I'll go through this quickly by giving a short introduction about where Pag-Ibig Fund is currently, and also go through the effects of the pandemic on our operations, and discuss all the initiatives that we've done to help our members and other stakeholders, such as our partner developers. So next slide, please. Yeah, so we have 14.69 million active members as of 2019, December 2019, with and our net fund asset is at 603.39 billion pesos. That's also a new record. Collections from our members, 50.38 billion, another record of the fund in 2019. And we have almost 140 offices all over the country and presence in 20 locations worldwide. And last year, our net income was the highest ever net income at 34.37 billion. And we declared 90% because under the charter of Pag-Ibig Fund, the Republic Act 9679, at least 70% of our net income has to be declared as dividends and to be credited to the accounts of all of our members. So the total was 31.07 billion, highest ever again. It translates to 6.73% dividend rate for our members, those contributing or saving 100 peso a month with a counterpart from employers. And for those who have voluntarily saved with the fund through our modified Pag-Ibig 2 or MP2 savings, it earned 7.23%. Next slide, please. If you can go next slide. Okay, so Pag-Ibig Fund has done quite well in the past few years. And in terms of, if I may mention this, in terms of housing, retail housing loan releases, last year we did 86.7 billion pesos, almost 87 billion pesos, 12 billion higher than 2018's 75 billion. This year, we were supposed to go for 100 billion. First time in the history of Pag-Ibig Fund to release a total of 100 billion peso worth of loans to our members. And unfortunately, the pandemic happened. So what's funding it? Mostly members voluntarily saving with the fund. I mentioned earlier, previous slide, please. So last year, our lending, the huge growth in lending is being financed by savings from our members. And last year, the 50 billion collections from members, it grew actually by 10 billion. You know what, Klink? Over the years, before 2017, the growth in our member savings or members' contributions was an average of 2 billion a year, like from 2012 until 2016, it grew by 2 billion a year. But in 2017, it grew by 3.5 billion. 2018, it increased by 4 billion. And last year, from 40.3 billion, it grew to 50.3 billion. So 10 billion increase. And again, driven by voluntary savings from our members. Now, okay. Yeah, so this is the growth in lending. And Klink, you asked Secretary Carl earlier about the outlook on housing. So what we're looking at before the pandemic is from last year's 86.7 billion, it would hit for the first time 100 billion. In 2012, I was the Deputy CEO for Housing, and we were able to grow the loan releases every year from 31.8 billion to 57.3 billion in 2016. Then when President Duterte appointed me, it grew. It took us 1 year to bring it to 60 billion level, another year to 70 billion, and another year to 86 billion. We were hoping to skip 90 billion in 2020 and bring it to 100 billion. Next slide, please. And as mentioned, it's being funded, no borrowings, being funded by savings from the members. So there's a huge jump last year. Next slide. Okay, so what's the impact of this pandemic on our operations? Actual collections from members dropped by 1% versus target, so not that much. Next slide, please. Let's keep in mind that the impact really was just the second half of March. This is first quarter. But for April collections, January to April, you can see here that for March, because of the ECQ declaration, March 17 until end of March, there was a big drop, 2 billion drop versus February's collections and versus January also. And April, from usual 4.9 billion collections, 5 billion, it dropped by 4 billion pesos. Next slide, please. Now, for short-term loan availments of our members, there's a 10% drop versus target, almost the same. 8% drop in terms of a number of loans approved because of the last 2 weeks of March during ECQ. Next slide. On monthly releases, we can see here that January, February, we're doing good. And then there's an impact on March and a big drop in April. What we're expecting is after the lifting of modified ECQ in Metro Manila, we expect that there's going to be a huge increase, and I'll be discussing the online measures, online systems, facilities that we have in place now so that we can serve our members without them having to go to our branches. Next slide, please. Okay, for housing loans. So if we base it on target, we're good. 15.77 billion as of the first quarter. But on a monthly basis, next slide, please. Now there. So we were expecting 7 billion takeout residential mortgages in March. Instead of 7 billion, it dropped by from target. It dropped by 3.23 billion. And in April, just 880 million worth of loan releases. And I would want to highlight that despite the pandemic, despite the lockdown, we had volunteers from the Lingkod Pag-Ibig, our employees, to continuously process mortgages for our members. It is to provide support to our partner developers, because we all know whenever there's an economic crisis, main issue really is cash flow. So in our case, during the declaration, after the declaration of ECQ, I gave an instruction to all the officers of the fund to make sure that all the payables of Pag-Ibig Fund should be done quite fast, because the industry, the whole housing industry, badly needs cash flow. We've heard some lending institutions, our friends in the banking sector, that a lot of them started to suspend loan releases to the developers. So still, in our case, we are continuously working on it, and we are supporting the industry. Next slide, please. Okay, so what have we been doing after the declaration of ECQ? So for our member borrowers, because they are our members, and the members are the owners of Pag-Ibig Fund. It is a private in character. It's owned by the members, so the members are the real owners. So we have two programs as loan relief for our members. The first one is the grace period under RA 11469, or the Bayanihan to Heal as One Act. So this mandatorily covers all the borrowers, may it be short-term loan borrowers, calamity loan, multipurpose loans, and also housing loan borrowers. So there's no need to apply. It's automatic coverage. And after the lifting of MECQ, that's when the amortization will commence. So that one is under the Bayanihan to Heal as One Act. So for Pag-Ibig Fund, immediately after the declaration of ECQ, we announced the 3-month moratorium on March 17 with the approval of the Board of Trustees of Pag-Ibig Fund, led by Secretary Del Rosario, the Secretary of the Department of Human Settlements and Urban Development. Now, the 3-month moratorium is also open to our member borrowers. This one, they just have to go to the website to avail of it. They have to key in their housing loan account number or their membership ID number for those with calamity loans or multipurpose loans. And then they just have to key in their contact info, and there's automatic processing behind it. So there's, for example, for housing, it's 80% automatic approval. We made sure that all socialized housing borrowers or all minimum wage earners will be automatically be approved. Their application will be automatically be approved by our system in support of our minimum wage workers, regardless of the loan status, even if the loan is about to be foreclosed or undergoing foreclosure. So that gets suspended for 3 months to give breathing space to our member borrowers. This one is a straightforward moratorium for 3 months. So it freezes the accounts, and it extends the loan term by 3 months. Next slide, please. Another thing that we did to encourage the continued construction of socialized and low-cost housing units for our members. So we increased our budget for house construction financing fund from 2 billion pesos. So the Board of Trustees of Pag-Ibig Fund gave full support to the recommendation of management to increase it to 10 billion. So this one acts as a bridge financing facility because as developers now start to do business again. So we wanted them to be able to draw down from their properties because when they deliver mortgage folders to Pag-Ibig Fund for takeouts, it would take probably a couple of weeks before it gets released, the total amount gets released. So this one, day one, they can immediately draw. They can, of course, take care of their employees, keep their employees. They can also start paying their contractors and suppliers. So this one has a multiplier effect. And although the amount is 10 billion and it is our contribution to the administration in terms of providing economic stimulus package, specifically for the housing sector engaged in socialized and low-cost housing projects. So the 10 billion is credit facility. It's a revolving line. So a developer who avails of 100 million can actually draw more than 100 million because the payments will come from the takeouts. So if you draw 100 million and there's a takeout of 150 million, there's going to be offsetting and you get the 50 million balance, and then you can draw again. Next slide, please. Now, Pag-Ibig Fund or Lingkod Pag-Ibig under the new normal, these are the measures that we have in place. So we will be requiring, of course, the wearing of face masks at all times. Temperature will be taken. Those who would register temperatures higher than 37.5 degrees would be asked to drop their or to just leave their application forms with our frontliners outside, so that the member can take care of himself or herself and seek medical help. There's also the disinfection of footwear. Inside our branches, it's a controlled environment. There's going to be 2-meter social distancing in our lobbies. And in the back room, we've created silos to protect our own employees moving forward. We expect a huge number of members going to our branches to avail of calamity loans when MECQ is lifted in Metro Manila. Next slide, please. We are also happy to share with our members that our Loyalty Card Plus actually serves as a cash card also. So for those members who have yet to avail of Loyalty Card Plus, please do so in branches that are already open. So that should you need to borrow from the fund, you don't have to go to our branches anymore. You can do it online, and it gets credited to your account immediately. Another option, if you don't like the Loyalty Card Plus, you can also get other cash cards from our partner banks, such as Land Bank, DBP, and UCPB. Our Loyalty Card Plus, we have 2 accredited universal banks, Asia United Bank and Union Bank, and we are currently working with other partner banks of ours for them to also join our Loyalty Card Plus. Next slide, please. Now, as part of our Lingkod Pag-Ibig campaign, we've launched, luckily we've launched last December, our Virtual Pag-Ibig. Virtual Pag-Ibig is an online portal. It's like having your own branch anytime, anywhere. So if you have Loyalty Card Plus, it gives you direct access to a Virtual Pag-Ibig. If you don't have one, you can still register, but there's a branch activation for overseas Filipino workers, our members who are overseas Filipino workers. We have a separate process for that that would require submission of pictures of their IDs or passport, among other things, and there's a manual authentication being done by our people. So this gives you access to all your savings accounts with us, or contributions. You can see your contributions with us. If you have loans, you can also see them. If you want to pay, you can pay immediately. It's being powered by PayMaya as our payment gateway. And at the same time, if you would want to save more, you can also do that thing. And if you want to avail of loans, you can also do the same thing. So luckily, we were able to launch it last December. It was a multi-year project of ours. So we envision a lot of members to start utilizing this. And this facility has a 2-way chat service being manned by real people, not by robots. So if you have questions, there's a 24/7 chat service being manned by our contact center. It's just that during MECQ, we had to limit the business hours or the availability of our chat service Monday to Saturday from 8 to 5 p.m. But after the lifting, we hope to go back to being 24/7, to provide 24/7 chat service or email service or contact service. Next slide, please. Now, this one is actually being beta tested now. Beta testing is ongoing. This will allow our borrowers, our members, to just file online, to go through a process of just keying in their membership ID number if they would want to apply for a calamity loan or multipurpose loan. So the requirement really is the same. So usually you would have to fill up a form, ask your HR to certify that you're an employee of that company, and then you would have to go to any of our branches to submit it physically. This facility will allow you to just take pictures of the front page and second page of your loan application. You just have to upload it together with your valid ID, and the system would authenticate you by checking your MID number. And once you're inside, it will ask you to key in your cash card. So may it be Land Bank Cash Card, DBP, UCPB, or Loyalty Card Plus, powered by AUB and Union Bank. So you'll have to key in your card number, which will serve as authentication also to make sure that it's you. And we also require a submission, a selfie of yours holding your valid ID and also your cash card, where the proceeds will be credited. And it goes directly to our system. We envision this facility to be used by most of our members. But just the same, as Lingkod Pag-Ibig, as servants of our members, we will still allow, of course, acceptance of over-the-counter applications, especially for our members in the provinces who may have the facility or the internet connection or even gadgets to do it online. So there's still going to be, it will still be allowed, but we strongly urge our members to avail of this one. And we will be announcing it in a few days' time regarding live date or go live date of this one. Next slide, please. Yeah, so that ends my presentation. And again, thank you, Klink, for the invitation and for this opportunity to share what Pag-Ibig Fund has been doing during this pandemic. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Moti. I just want to say that before you started your presentation, I was told that our reach has now exceeded 25,500. And I think more people will be listening, especially since you mentioned calamity fund loans of Pag-Ibig. But may I allow Ben to ask the first question, please?
Yeah. Good morning, Mr. Moti. I think a couple of things that your members are going to be very interested to find out. First of all, regarding calamity loans, you've obviously been extending a lot of help to your members. And is there any concern about the viability of your fund? And particularly if we have another bigger shock. How are you set up for that? Are you in robust shape to take care of everybody?
Yes. Thank you, Ben, for that question. So we've always run Pag-Ibig Fund, managed Pag-Ibig Fund, and with a special focus on sustainability over profitability, actually. For calamity loans and multipurpose loans, these are loans against the savings of the members. So it's 100% covered in terms of collateral. Funding wise, we've seen a lot of applications for calamity loans. The biggest one that happened was actually during the Typhoon Ondoy, which allowed us to lend 14 billion pesos worth of calamity loans. This one is nationwide in coverage, so we expect this to be much, much higher. But luckily also for 2020, our budget for calamity loans and multipurpose loans, we increased it to 60 billion, and we believe that we have more than enough to address that. I also would want to mention that in our government securities, we have a total of investment fund of 65 billion, mostly in government securities. We don't want, preferably what we prefer to do is not to sell our GS because it might compete with the fundraising activities of our Bureau of Treasury. But once employers start to remit, because they have not remitted yet because they are still on lockdown, we believe that we have more than enough. And as a matter of, as a preventive action, what I asked our finance, our treasury, was to hold on to cash and near cash for the meantime, knowing that there's going to be a huge demand from our members. So we're pretty good in terms of liquidity.
Okay, and another question that people that have home loans now or wonder or thinking about getting one, because of the crisis we're having, the BSP has done what it can and has knocked interest rates down. I think by like 0.5% so far, and if this goes on, likely more by the end of the year. What's that going to do to the interest rates on Pag-Ibig loans?
Yeah, this is a very nice question. Thank you for asking this. Ben, around November, of last year, I got a lot of calls from my former colleagues in the banking sector. They were telling me, remember November, December, the inflation was at its highest, right? So they were telling me that the 5.375% interest rate of Pag-Ibig Fund for home loans was artificially low. They said that, Ahmed, you have to increase your rates because it's artificially low. And I told them, you know what? We don't borrow. We don't borrow from the market. So the cost that we are considering now would only be the cost of money or in terms of dividends that we will provide to our members. And I told them that we are this was in 2018, and I told them that 2018, yeah, this was 2018 or 2019, 2019, right? So
2018 was the high year. Last year was better.
Yeah, sorry, yeah, 2018. So this was 2018, and I told them that our net income would break our previous record of 30 billion. Most probably, we will record a net income in 2018 of 32 billion, around 32 billion, and we did 33 billion. And I told them that we're good. Our net income is, we're about to break the last record, and our dividend rate would probably be in the mid 6%. So we had a dividend rate of 6.91%. And I told them that there's nothing wrong with us. Maybe you just want to earn some more. And but they kept on telling me. Now, going back to the interest rate, when I became the deputy CEO for Pag-Ibig Fund in 2011 for housing, the interest rate was at 11.5% when the banks were lending at 6 to 8%. So I asked for a change in our pricing to make it a little bit more competitive with the banking sector. So I was quoted by our interest rate setting committee, 8%. So I said, okay, fine. And they said, Ahmed, if you can improve your collection efficiency, if you can lower the NPL ratio, which was then at 25%, then the interest rate committee could lower the rate. So we worked on improving our collections. We outsourced a lot of things. In short, I copied a lot of things from one of my mentors, Mr. Abraco, the chairman now of Asia United Bank. So I copied a lot from the banking sector. We put it in place in Pag-Ibig Fund. And our NPL ratio now is at 8%, nearing 9%, a big drop from the previous 25%. Now, I would want to mention also that we have another ratio that we are monitoring, NPL 5 ratio, loans up to 5 months in arrears, because since we are the only ones lending to socialized housing borrowers, that one is at 4%. So they would slide to 4 or 5 months in arrears, then they will go back into performing loans. Now, since 2012, the rates have been going down. And in 2018, we announced the lowest at 5.375% with 3% subsidized rate for minimum wage earners. So that's below market. It's a subsidy program. Our tax savings are being plowed back through subsidy program for the minimum wage earners. So the rates for Pag-Ibig Fund will remain for as long as we don't borrow from the market. And based on our projections, we just finished our stress testing. Even on the worst case, we won't borrow this year. So that's a good thing. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Moti. Ben, there are a lot of questions pouring in from social media.
Go for it.
I don't think we have time to read all of them, but let me read them in the order that I received them. There's one from a Mr. Jeff Ocampo, and the question for Mr. Moti is, do you have visibility on loan defaults of members? If so, how will this affect the fund and the MP2 program dividends?
Yeah, definitely this year, because of the at least 2.5 months that we've lost. Internally, we were projecting around 6 to 6.5% dividend rate for MP2. Way above market. Again, the dividend rate is a function of our net income. But this year, based on our projections, if the MECQ is lifted and members start to pay, worst case, it would be between 3 to 4%. That's going to be the dividend payout. But it's hard to give a good number. Before I used to share with some friends 50 BPS range. But now it's so hard to do that because we don't know if the moratorium, legislated grace period will be extended. I certainly hope, I'm not sure if Secretary Carl is still here, but I certainly hope that if the Bayanihan Act is extended, I hope that instead of making it mandatory grace period, maybe if they could allow, like Pag-Ibig Fund, to have a targeted grace period. We always, our mindset has always been to help our members. So those who badly need help, we will definitely help them. But, it's also a fact that we have members, husband and wife, both working for government. And, with government, everybody, continue to receive their salaries, right? So there's no so-called economic impact. But just the same, we hope that there's going to be breathing space, allow members to pay. And I would want to share that on voluntary basis, members have been paying. Now, regarding the question, what's the performing loans ratio, the reverse of NPL ratio of Pag-Ibig Fund? As of March, it actually improved to 91%. But our worst case is we are prepared for the collection efficiency, performing loans ratio, to go as low as 75%, which was the level it was in 2012. Even at that level, we're still good.
I think related to that, there's a question from Mario Hernandez. How can I deposit through online for my MP2?
Yeah, a lot of members, actually, we've been monitoring that on a weekly basis. A lot of our members have been continuously saving under their modified Pag-Ibig 2 accounts online in our website under virtual Pag-Ibig. They can actually pay, and the payment gateway is PayMaya, which charges much lower than what the previous bank was charging our members. So it's just the convenience fee is a pass-on fee. We don't charge anything so that our members can transact online. It's a lot cheaper for our overseas Filipino workers because I believe the processing fee is just 1.75%. So if you are sending 1,000 pesos instead of paying remittance centers $5, so that's a lot cheaper.
Okay, Ben, I'm sorry, I cut you off earlier. You had a question?
No, that's fine. I was noticing some of those that were coming through, so you caught that. That was good. We're good here. I think we're eating up our time. So
all right, let me ask a couple more, Mr. Moti. The Pag-Ibig Fund introduced the virtual Pag-Ibig, which allowed people to transact and avail of the fund services online. Could you tell us what other services Pag-Ibig will automate in the future?
Yeah. The plan really is to extend all the services that we are offering in our physical branches through virtual Pag-Ibig. And there are three different flavors. There's a virtual Pag-Ibig for our members, another virtual Pag-Ibig for our employers, like Manila Times could go through that, so that there's no need to sign applications from your employees. You just have to approve online, and it gets processed fast. And also another virtual Pag-Ibig for our developers. So we've been planning to do that, to migrate all our services online, at least as an option. So silver lining with this pandemic is that it looks like the new normal would be more of online services. So we're there, so to speak. So inspections are now being done because of the lockdown via video calls for us to inspect the houses that will be financed by Pag-Ibig Fund. Documents are now, we accept scanned copies instead of touching physical documents as added protection for our members. So the developers would submit to us scanned copies, and we review the scanned copies. So luckily for Pag-Ibig Fund, but sheer luck that when we work on our projects, we believe that that's a future, and it's paying dividends now. So we hope to launch almost all, even practically all our services will be online now. So that's the plan. And if I may add, Klink, if you will allow me,
sure.
I would want to encourage all our housing loan borrowers who are in a position to continuously pay their housing loans to please do so, because our risk-based pricing, and we have not increased our interest rate since 2012, from 11.5 down to 5.375%. Because if we get to maintain the collection efficiency, the rates will remain the same. So I encourage all members who are capable, who are able to pay, to please do so. Help us, help you keep the rates very low. And another thing, by now, our housing loan borrowers have realized probably that they are much better they're much better with Pag-Ibig Fund than if they borrowed from other lenders, because our penalty policy is actually, if you default, the penalty computation is only based on the amount that you missed to pay. For example, if monthly amortization is 10,000, after 4 months, it's 18% of 40,000 pesos. With banks, I came from a couple of commercial banks. If you default, the penalty will be 18% of the total outstanding balance. If your loan is 1 million, that's 18% of 1 million, and the loan becomes due and demandable. With Pag-Ibig Fund, we are already preparing measures on how to support our borrowers, knowing that many of them, and I hope not too many, have lost jobs. So we will be there now that our members badly need our help. Because at the end of the day, this is the money of the members, and we will make sure that the fund will be there now that they need us the most.
Thank you, Mr. Moti. There are really a lot more questions we can ask, but maybe we can send some of these to your staff so that we can write about them. But let me ask our last question. The Balik Probinsya program of Senator Go, probably our most influential senator now, has evolved into now an executive order. And this is meant to decongest the urban centers or motivate people to return to their home provinces. Is there a role that Pag-Ibig is playing to help realize this campaign to decongest urban centers?
Yes. Actually, we fully support the Balik Probinsya initiative now. So we fully support the efforts, especially of Senator Bongo, for Balik Probinsya. In fact, we committed to open more small branches in cities, provinces where we have yet to open offices, so that we can serve our members who would be joining the Balik Probinsya program. And at the same time, I also would want to highlight that more than 95% of the mortgages that we process are actually in the provinces. Nearest would be Cavite. There's not much in Metro Manila, because we have a cap of 6 million. So we are already there. And the growth of Pag-Ibig Fund is very strong outside Metro Manila, where the demand is. And just to answer the earlier question about the outlook for the housing industry, we've made actions like we are sending a strong signal, like the 10 billion stimulus package for our low-cost housing developers, that Pag-Ibig Fund is here. We will make sure that there's liquidity, that all the mortgages will be taken out. And at the same time, we told them that most probably what will happen, because the demand is at more than 6.5 million housing demand now, the plan really is for them to just continuously give us quality houses for our members, and to give us good accounts. So more than that, we will take care of everything.
Thank you, Mr. Moti. I think everyone will be keenly watching news from Pag-Ibig. I myself, I invested in your mutual fund, so I have a personal interest to You will
be happy. You will be happily surprised.
Thank you, so sir. Much. Thank you, Mr. Moti. Any final words before you leave us?
Yes. Just to encourage all our members to continuously save with Pag-Ibig Fund. This is your fund, and we every year at least 90% for the last 3 years, at least 90% or almost 90% dividend declaration, because this is your money, this is our fund, and rest assured that we will continuously do measures to help all our members who need help. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Moti. We'll be sending those questions. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you.
Ben, would you care to introduce our next speaker?
I would be happy to. Sheila Lobian is probably our favorite real estate guru here at the office. And besides being the chief executive officer and the driving force behind the Lobian Realty Group, Sheila also chairs the Women in Business Committee of the European Chamber of Commerce in the Philippines. She's a Bachelor of Science in Tourism graduate from UP Diliman and has taken up the Management Development Program at AIM. She has a Master's in Business Management from UP Manila and has also had the Management Executive Program at the National University of Singapore in INSEAD Business School. So, the lady knows what she's doing. Her main advocacy, apart from promoting and driving the commercial real estate business, is geared towards mentoring, networking, and taking part in other social action for the empowerment of Filipino women professionals who are, advancing greatly thanks to help of people like her. So, since we're a little short on time, I'll cut it short and please welcome Sheila Lobian. Sheila, good morning.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Ben, for the introduction. Always a pleasure to be part of the Manila Times Business Forum. Kling, thank you, and Blanca for having us here again. So let me just share my slide before I start the presentation. Right. So this morning, I'll be sharing a snapshot of the COVID-19 impact on the Philippine real estate industry, give you an update about what's happening in the office, residential, the housing. We've touched that a couple of times already from our two previous speakers. Talk about the tourism market, the hospitality industry heavily hit right now, and a little bit about the logistics market. It's booming because of the growth, the sudden growth in e-commerce. Everyone's buying things online right now. And in the end, also give you our near-term expectations. What's the new normal kind of will look like in the real estate market. So let me start. This is what's happening right now. How many global cases? 5.6 million COVID-19 cases, almost 350 deaths globally. And what's scary to note is that even the first world countries are not prepared. And up to today, there is no vaccine yet. That's adding to a lot of uncertainties that we are currently feeling at the moment. When you look at the top 10 COVID-19 countries affected by COVID-19, bulk of them, as I have shared, are first world countries. And even these guys who are already financially, economically strong are having a hard time containing the virus. Looking at the industries that are heavily affected in the first part of the COVID-19 pandemic, you'll note that almost all of them are in the tourism, hospitality-related business. Here in the Philippines, entertainment, definitely no more concerts, cinemas, etc. And even the biggest convention hall that we have, the one of the Iglesia ni Cristo along in the Bulacan area, is now being converted as a post-care for COVID-19 patients. The airline industry, the recent news that we've seen, PAL might go bankrupt. They're asking for help. Cebu Pacific as well. In the hotel industry, the recent news as well, Polo is closing. Several other hotel operators are already having them locally because of the decline in demand in the tourism as well in our country. If you will look at the top 10 countries again, when you look at their growth forecast, almost all of them, these are like the top most visited countries in Europe, led by Italy, France, Germany, Spain. All of them are already forecasting negative growth for 2020. But when you look at Asia, so far still positive, except for Thailand, heavily tourism in terms of their industry. But the next reforecast, we are all expecting that there will be an adjustment and almost no growth to probably negative growth for the Philippines and several other Asian countries, neighboring countries. For the Philippines, we are always impacted by the economic crisis. And I'm sharing here a slide of all the crisis that we have experienced. Very resilient. I've always shared this, but you will see that every time there is a crisis, our growth in terms of the GDP increases. It's sharply declining. I have only experienced the global financial crisis. I've not seen Asian financial crisis, but you will see here that there was a sharp decline. At that time, the market was booming, but come 2009, when the market hit, when the global financial crisis hit the Philippines, we have experienced that. And in the real estate market, rental were almost cut by 50%, the rental rates. And I'll show that later on with some other slides here moving forward. Now, let me go deeper into the office market. I always believe that the office market is one of the best barometers of the economy, because once office spaces are built and taken, that means jobs are created in the market. And when people have jobs, of course, they have the money, they will spend, they will go out, and that will fuel everything that we have: the food industry, the shopping malls, the travel, tourism, etc. Now, looking at the GDP growth rate versus the office rental rate, a lot of our clients have already called us, even landlords, developers, BPOs, call centers, and POGO. They're asking us, will there be a rental, decrease? For the tenant side, they're already asking, where can we get the best deal out there? For the landlords, they're trying to hold that rental pre-COVID rate. But you'll see that during Asian financial crisis and even SARS, and the recent one, the global financial crisis, when that happened, when there is a crisis, automatically the rental rates also will be affected. When there is a contraction in the economy, the property market will definitely have will be impacted as well. And in the next few years, currently there's no recorded transaction yet that we can show you that the rentals have already gone down by X%. But we expect that rental rates will soften in the next few years, in the next few months and few years to come. This is the GDP construction percentage versus the office supply. I'd like you to look at 2008, 2009 GFC again. When that happened, there was a contraction in terms of number of buildings, office spaces, and properties being built in the market. But we felt it 2 years after, primarily because projects that are already committed now will push through, and there will be any changes, construction delays. We will see that a year or two from now. But you'll notice that in 2017, 2018, we've seen the highest in terms of construction, in terms of the office market that has entered the Philippines. So we reached 1 million square meters of new office spaces that has entered the market. And it has been growing for the last 10 years. Like what Undersecretary Carl had mentioned earlier, we've seen a very good GDP growth rate for the last 10 years. And Philippines is one of the fastest growing country in the market. And a lot of companies are actually investing here in the country. Metro Manila office supply, as we speak, vacancy rate is very low. Almost all the newly built buildings out there are fully leased, driven by the demand coming from the POGO, the BPOs, and traditional office takers. Average rental rate is at 1,200 pesos per square meter. And even though there is this, 900 square meters of office space that has entered the market this year, almost more than 40% of that is already leased, committed, meaning companies have signed, paid, the developers, landlords have already received the contracts and the 6 months minimum deposit. So it's a very healthy office market prior to, of course, the lockdown and all these, what's happening at the moment. When we look at the office supply pipeline, the next 3 years, we still have a very good office supply. It's not as big compared to 2017, 2018, wherein we are seeing 1 million square meters of office space entering the market in 1 year. The next 2 years will be 40% less. And if demand will soften, then this is good because we won't see any oversupply. What's being supplied will be taken and absorbed in the market. Currently, the outsourcing industry is still here and growing. As we speak, we get a lot of calls from them. They have to follow the social distancing policies that the government is implementing, and therefore they will need more space. Some are looking at temporary space also to house their people because it's very costly to provide housing as well. So, what they plan to do is to have a decentralized operation after the ECQ is lifted. And I'll talk about that later on. So this one, I'd also like to share this because we're constantly monitoring the average rental rates and land values in the market. And it's not surprising to know and see that Makati, BGC are still the top, holding the highest in terms of rental at almost 2,000 pesos per square meter. And Bay City, because of the gaming industry, the entertainment, the pogo, they have seen the highest jump in rental. They have reached 1,500 pesos per square meter already. And we will monitor this and we will share with you an update. Definitely, there will be some softening here, maybe a decline in the next few months or years to come. And maybe in the next forum, Clink, we can share a new slide with data to back up this one. But as we speak today, this is what's happening. This is the current rate and still all good, all positive so far. What's driving the demand? Pretty much the same. The gaming industry are still taking all the office spaces, not just the office, but the residential market as well, the condos, fueling the retail, the luxury stores, buying things left and right, the Chinese people who are here. The BPO industry, the call center industry, they are still growing, not as big compared to how many years ago, but the growth is still here. And then traditional office takers who are upgrading their office or relocating or consolidating their operations. So these are the main drivers of the office demand. And the pogo industry, very controversial, a lot of issues here. But if you look at their growth in the last 5 years, they are taking now, right now, they're 10%, occupying 10% of the total office stock in the market and paying the highest rental, fueling not just the office market, but the condominium market as well. The BPO industry, their back to normal plans will be so much different. They're talking about business continuity plans. They have to somehow decentralize. They realize that when everything is concentrated in one place and there's a lockdown, it's so hard. The last 2 months, we receive a lot of calls from our client asking for help because they need to house their people. They need to have a skeletal workforce. They cannot have that work from home 100% all the time. We've checked with so many operators and even CCAP, DPAP, the outsourcing organizations are saying that they can probably just implement maximum of 40% work from home and the rest has to be done in the office because of some privacy issues and the telco, the internet, the data connectivity of the current market is also not that strong yet, and having people work from home is not what they have, is not something that we can already do at the moment. So there are a lot of rooms, a lot of things to be done in the infrastructure side of the country. And township location, 60% of the mixed-use township projects are outside Metro Manila. The current government, as we've heard, they're pushing developments and urbanization outside Metro. And therefore, we see a lot of big developers, the likes of SM, Ayala, Robinsons, Philinvest, and even boutique developers pushing development outside. This work, live, play type of environment, we'll see that more and more, especially now after being 2 months, more than 2 months in a small, let's say, condo. You want to go out. You can't even go out and use the facility, right? So this mixed use, open air, lots of lights will be the key, the next big thing. Healthy buildings, not just green, but healthy buildings with good air quality, bright light, where people will have a very good mental health. Mental health is another topic, but that's something that will be addressed by a lot of developers also moving forward. In the provincial area, what's good is that a lot of good stock, good developments out there, and the rental rates is half of the, landmark projects here in the metro. So if you see 1,000 plus per square meter rental rate in Makati. In the provincial area, you can get half of that. And the BPO industry, the outsourcing industry, will take advantage of this to also capture the lower cost in terms of the labor market. In the residential market, housing market, we've heard so many things about this. Bulk of the condominium developments that we have at the moment and will be finished in the next 2 to 3 years are in that 2 to 7 million peso range per unit, which is targeting a lot of the young population, young professional, the BPO workers, the OFW employees, the OFWs also. However, we don't see any price appreciation. It will be inactive at least in the next few months. In fact, a lot of developers are enticing people to buy properties right now by giving flexible payment terms, longer reservation period payment terms, just for you to buy during this time of the pandemic. And definitely a lot of people out there should be in the lookout to buy good properties, fire sale. There will be people who will unload their asset to become, more liquid as we go along. And therefore, people will start to sell their properties probably at a discount. So if you have cash, cash is king today. Time to look for that investment opportunities. This is shared also by the CEO of Pag-Ibig, and he backed this up. When you look at the real estate loans, investment in the real estate as measured by the real estate loans, you'll see that even during crisis, pandemic, and all that, it has steadily increased. Meaning, housing, properties, it's really part of the basic human needs. And from 2008 up to 2019, we've seen a steady increase in terms of real estate loans. Banks are lending money, not just to the locals, Filipinos, but also companies who are also doing projects, property projects here in the country. And this is good. This will start fueling the economy. That's why Pag-Ibig is also pushing loans so that people will borrow money, will buy their dream house and lot also someday. The tourism hospitality industry heavily hit. We don't really need to expound further on this, but what I'd like to share here is that when the economy contracts, when there is a crisis, definitely the tourism revenue will also be affected. And we are seeing this from Asian financial crisis, the SARS outbreak, the GFC, and today with COVID, which is a combination of economic crisis and health crisis. We have seen already a very sharp decline in terms of tourism revenue. And in the hotel industry also, in terms of number of rooms supplied in the market, almost all the big brands, all the big players are already here in the Philippines. Name the top hotels and they're here. They can be found here and they're growing. However, with what's happening at the moment, we see a very sharp decline in their revenue. And several hotel operators now are repurposing their assets. During the ECQ period, a lot of them have given their rooms to call centers, BPOs, who need to house their people while they have to have a skeletal workforce during the lockdown. And even today, big hotel brands, local brands are repurposing their conference room because definitely no more conventions, no more events. They're putting their meeting rooms and conference areas as a temporary office space and offering it to the BPO, the call center industry, who need to follow social distancing while the MECQ is lifted. And a lot of hotel operators are doing that right now, offering their facility for the outsourcing industry. In the logistics market, it's not surprising to know that they're growing, the warehousing industry, primarily because the current crisis had speed up the use of the internet, e-commerce. So we are now so used to buying things online, and we will see that there will be a lot of growth in the warehousing industry moving forward. In fact, the projection is that it will grow by 10%, almost 10% in the next few years, and it's going to be a trillion peso market soon. where we expect the warehousing industry to also grow. It's obvious they will be near Metro Manila because bulk of the transaction, bulk of what's happening is always here in the metro. And nearest to Metro Manila would be Calabarzon, Central Luzon. And if you want to go south further than what we have here, we have the Visayas and Mindanao. But bulk of the warehouse logistics operators, they're currently near here in the metro. And we see that growing moving forward. So the new normal, with all the uncertainties that we have, with all the scenarios that I've shared, the current normal, we expect a lot of companies, businesses, property operators, developers to balance this life and economic well-being. So we have to look at that all the time. And what we would like to support as a real estate practitioner, and all the private sectors out there, the build project, it should continue. The Philippines has to be competitive. We need this infrastructure to attract more companies to invest in the Philippines, to put up shop here. And this is the best solution in the short term, because we want to prop up the economy. We want things to move forward, people to have money, people to spend, jobs to be created. And the build project is something that we highly support, and all the private sector should also highly support. And the expenses in the health and safety, the well-being, will definitely increase. In fact, a lot of property owners, developers, malls, etc., are already implementing this and will be implementing this as we open the economy again, as we see the new normal. The confidence of everyone will not be back until the vaccine is out there. While it's not there yet, we have to follow a lot of the social distancing, mask everywhere. So that will really be the new normal. And along with that, we have to slowly start the economy again, so that people will be able to go back, will be able to earn money, will be able to spend, and that will fuel everything back to normal again. And here is our near-term expectations, given what we've shared. What will drive the demand in the office market and in the condo market would still be the POGOs, the Chinese, very controversial, but we need them, they're growing. The BPO industry, as I've shared, the strategy now will be more to be able to be resilient, to have that business continuity, so that when another pandemic happens, they will be ready. Decentralization will happen, and it's happening at the moment. A lot of the players are already talking about where to go next, how they can decentralize their current real estate office plans, and how they can do it in the next few months or years to come. And the mixed-use township developments, house and lot, people have realized this. For those who have cash, who have extra fund, aside from having a condo in the CBD, they will look at house and lot again outside Metro Manila or near Metro Manila, as far as Cavite, Laguna, Batangas, and then Bulacan. And the increase in health and sanitation costs, very obvious, very normal. People will spend a lot on this. Property management will be very crucial in the next few months and years to come. And that ends my presentation. Happy to take any calls, any questions that you may have. And if you need more info about the real estate market, you may follow us online. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Sheila.
Thank you very much.
I think first of all, I have to thank you for not only today's forum, but you've always been very supportive of the Manila Times and very supportive of our team. I mean, you are our friend. If only for that, I think you deserve a lifetime free subscription to the Manila Times. I'm glad that you mentioned some of the opportunities, because I think a lot of people are rattled because of the tremendous economic impact of the pandemic. It is undeniable. But as I wrote in the editorial of our paper last Sunday, for every crisis there are opportunities. And if you could go back to some of those things you said earlier, what those opportunities are. You mentioned, for instance, the fire sale, perhaps in the residential market. You mentioned that there even if there is a contraction in office space requirements from the BPOs, they may need bigger space now just to have distancing. So maybe if you can go back to some of those things you had mentioned, elaborate on them, on what are these silver linings that we can look forward to, as we struggle forward from this pandemic.
Okay, that's a very good question. Thank you, Kling. As a real estate practitioner, I always believe that investing in real estate is always one of the safest way to place your money, because land will always be there, the property will always be there. And when you look at the history, no matter what happens in the Philippines, anywhere in the world, not just the Philippines, the market will definitely recover. And once the market recovers, the land value, things will go back and appreciate again. So location is very important, key, and timing as well. So I have a personal story to share, because it was also during the global financial crisis that we bought a property here in the South. And this is the opportunity that I said, every time that there's a crisis, you look at those opportunities. In 2009, when the GFC crisis hit us, a lot of those developers and even rich individuals, people who have extra cash, started to buy properties, look at properties, and those people who bought properties at that time are very happy today, because, as a personal example, the land values here in the South, Las Piñas, Alabang area, in 2009, you can find a property at 10,000 pesos per square meter. Today, in our area, you can find that easily. The price is at 70,000 pesos per square meter. So in a span of less than 10 years, you have multiply your investment 7 times. So that's good. And you can only do so in the real estate market. But it's a long-term play. It's not for everyone. So you have to hold the cash. You have to hold the property for a long time to experience that upside, that growth. And in the office market, it's always, I would say, not the safest, but because the contracts of the companies with these developers and landlords are minimum 3 years. So there is this buffer. The contract that they have will be there at least for the next 2-3 years or 5 years if it's still new, and they have deposits, so they're holding on to reservation deposits equivalent to maximum 6 months. And if you have a pogo tenant, you have more than 6 months, sometimes 12 months worth of deposit. So there is money there. You're not like in the hotel industry when something happened and all the guests are out and no revenue right away. And if there is a crisis like this, even the banquets, the buffets, the events, all gone. So it's a very hard market. However, in the office, it's a different situation. That's why a lot of big players are in that business. All the big tycoons are in the real estate office market also.
Okay, Ben, you want to ask a question?
Yeah. Hi, Sheila. I have a nuts and bolts question for you. You in your presentation, you touched upon how a lot of businesses, particularly the hospitality industry, but this is also affecting the office business too, are having to kind of repurpose their facilities, and even if they're not even if they're not something like a hotel that's using rooms for medical frontliners or BPO workers or something like that, offices are going to have to shift the way they're put together, just for doing work and also servicing clients. So what can you do, or your company, what can you do to help work with owners or developers, to kind of put these places together that are marketable as, hey, this is a safe building, it's ready to go for you. Have you guys thought about that? Are you working on anything that sort of, real helpful consultation right now for probably a lot of businesses who don't know what to do to get themselves ready to handle this new environment?
In the last 2 months, we're quite busy giving advice to several BPO clients of ours. The POGO players, definitely they're on hold. They're waiting for the MECQ to be lifted, but their operations are still there waiting. The outsourcing industry, the last 2 months, they've been very busy because they have to transition bulk of their people in the work from home or work from anywhere mode. And if they have to have people on site, then they need to provide them with the housing, with the facility. So we help several of them in finding locations, hotels near their operations. So that's happening right now. But after the MECQ, of course, once the lockdown is lifted, then they'll have to reassess again. It's quite costly to provide housing also for your employees, right? Aside from shuttling them left and right to avoid the contact and because of the social distancing and all that. So there are a lot of things that we're doing, helping not just the hotel operators, but also the other side, the client of ours. In the office market, it's quiet, as I've shared. The last time, most of the landlords, developers have called us just asking for advice because a lot of tenants are asking for rental suspension if they can get a discount or not pay rental at all. For the office market, it was not that easy. The big players, the ones operating the malls, Ayala, SM, they've given rental, holidays already. But for the boutique developers or office developers, in fact, not many of them have given a rental holiday. The most that we've seen was they gave 1 month rent free, but it's specific to certain tenant clients of them that they've somehow value, depending on the relationship that they have. Others are just only given rental. The rental that would fall during the ECQ period, they can amortize that over 6 months, but you still have to pay the rent. They're just giving you a break. That's the current scenario right now. So our goal, our role is to help both sides find the middle ground. It's hard because landlords also, they have loans to pay, so they cannot just stop and not allow you not to pay rent. And then the other side, the tenants, the occupiers, if you still have a business going on, then your rent is your obligation. You still have to pay that. That's why the government has only given a direction wherein you can amortize rent, but you still have to pay it. So our role is to just advise both sides of the market.
And just one other quick thing that comes to mind. The government is really trying to put together a large-scale package for economic recovery. And now, I don't think that they're going to have a lot of money to spend on the real estate sector, but in terms of policy, what could they do to help? To help kind of boost things in the sector in general.
Mm-hmm. Well, where we play, the commercial real estate market, a lot of the outsourcing industry, the BPO players, they want the tax incentives, the things that they're experiencing to remain. There are a lot of tax changes in the BPO industry, and if the government will look at that, if we want to help them grow here in the country, then we have to incentivize them, support them. And there are so many ways to do that. And the BPO industry, for them to stay here, they have to be competitive aside from the labor cost that they like, because the Philippines, they enjoy high quality labor costs at a fraction of what they'll pay if they do it elsewhere. But aside from that, the government should also support them, other tax incentives that can be given. The current administration is pushing the growth outside of the metro, and that's why most of the PEZA accredited buildings now are all outside Metro Manila, because of course we want urbanization to also be there, and the labor, the employment to also move in the provinces, and that's good. That will help us, move the economy outside and decongest Metro Manila. So right now, we need all the help, any tax incentive, better things that they can give to these companies who are employing thousands of Filipinos will be greatly appreciated by many players and big players who are employing a lot of locals in the market.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you, Sheila. I just want to mention that as you're answering some of these questions, our reach has exceeded 66,500. So a lot of people interested in the outlook in your industry. There is a question here from one of our viewers, Rem Ramirez, and her question is, would the work from home affect substantially the office market? I think you touched on this earlier, but can you elaborate on it? I mean, of course, I think Ben has also asked about maybe reconfiguring offices, but what is a larger impact on the industry?
Well, too early to tell. We don't have data to back it up yet. But number one here, it's going to be work from anywhere now, right? Not just work from home. But the infrastructure that we have in the country is still not that strong. So technology part will play a very crucial role for the work from home to be totally embraced and implemented here in the country. In Metro Manila, it can be doable. That's why the outsourcing industry, they're saying that they can probably implement up to 40% is a stretch already to have 40% of their workforce work from home. Because imagine they will also have to provide those people with a laptop, cell phone, data connectivity. So it's going to be costly, and the quality also might not be that good. And there is privacy concerns there. A lot of big clients, especially the banks, the insurance industry, they are into that privacy, law, and you cannot just bring home the work. Some are lenient at the moment. They are, because it's a global pandemic. They can't do anything. But moving forward, they still want that everything is secured inside the office. There is an strong IT infrastructure. So what will happen in the midterm, as I have shared, social distancing will have to be observed. So 1 meter desk, 1 seat apart. So definitely in the shorter term, they would need more space. Now, long term, it has to be reviewed and reassessed again. The outsourcing industry, it's to stay. Companies will always talk about being efficient and cut costs. And one way of cutting costs is to always outsource non-core stuff. And the Philippines were the number one when it comes to voice, and second when it comes to non-voice. India is outsourcing a lot of jobs here in the market. We need to retool people, and that's why I like what the Undersecretary have shared. Education is part of the things that they will focus on. They need to implement that, because that's where we will grow the business. We need more engineers, more accountants, that higher value kind of work, so that the outsourcing industry, the higher paid work will be outsourced here in the country. And that would in turn translate to more office space in the market. And the Build project, I've been sharing this. We need to support that, because with the current infrastructure that we have, it's hard to replicate Metro Manila. We want to have more Metro Manila, right? 90% of the office stock is here in Metro Manila. Imagine that. Bulk of the office development and projects are here in the Metro, and about 10-15% outside. There are a lot of provinces there, or cities, that are already developed. And what's needed is the infrastructure, good internet connection, public transportation, connectivity between these cities. If that will happen, then we'll have more Metro Manila, and then more jobs will be created, and more companies, investors will come here in the country. India, they have a lot of multiple sites. That's why it's Philippines, 28 billion US dollar BPO outsourcing industry, while India, 150 billion US dollars. So there is a lot of room for growth there for us. Companies, not just from the US, will outsource here, but the neighboring countries as well, because we have a very good young population. Almost everyone can speak English. We have the right attitude. A lot of companies, they love the Philippines. They love Filipinos because of the attitude of the locals. When they are here, they can easily grow the business. And we want that. We want to maintain that competitive edge with the support of the government and the infrastructure that we have. I think that is doable. That is the silver lining that I see, that I want. And the real estate market is always a good place for investment. As I have shared, the property will always be there. And housing is always part of the basic needs of any human being, especially us Filipinos. Yung pangarap nating magkaroon ng bahay at lupa, it's always there. You want to have your own house and lot eventually someday, or your own place, a condo in a location where you also work or play.
Thanks, Sheila. I know we're running over time now, but let me ask a final question. With what you were saying earlier, does that mean this question from work from home, does that mean that we're going to be seeing more township developments, more developments outside of Metro Manila? And are we going to see more mixed use buildings, that can also house both office and residential requirements? Is that going to be the future? I know you mentioned that this was already happening before the pandemic, but are we going to be seeing more of these moving forward?
Yes, Click, definitely. We will see that. We have experienced this already. I get a lot of calls from clients, expats who have been, in the lockdown for the last 2 months. And it's crazy, right? If you're just in a small area and can't do anything, you want to get out. So the value proposition of a lot of big developers and players and boutique developers out there, that mixed-use township development will really grow, and location will be very important. You're in one area, but everything is there. So it's a place for you to work, live, and play, and you will need that. And the healthy buildings, the green buildings will be more and more important. The air quality, cleanliness, sanitation. So property management, also the way developers are handling their projects will also be the key factors when an individual will choose their next property purchase. So
Right.
those
I
are
know
the
that
things that we see.
I mentioned that was supposed to be the last question, but there's one viewer who's really insistent on asking her question. Her name is Edith DiChao. If you don't mind, the last question is, do you think lease price will go down for Metro Manila warehouses?
The lease rates for the warehousing, you'll be surprised, they're steadily increasing because there is a big demand, very few supply in the warehousing industry, especially with this pandemic where we are now forced to buy things online. So the logistics strategy will also be very important right now. People want less contact, less going out and just buy things online and have it delivered. So the warehousing industry rentals, the highest rental we've seen is 400 pesos. It has doubled, whereas 2 years ago, it was just the highest was at 200 pesos per square meter. Today, it's at 400, and we see no softening there because there is a shortage, very few warehouse developers, and the bulk of the logistics, the warehouse industries near Metro Manila are almost fully leased. And each logistics company, e-commerce, are building their own facility. Lazada, I think, just built their own one nearby. So it's a different market there.
That's the opportunity. Sheila,
Yes.
thank you very much for your time and for your continuing support for the Manila Times. We really appreciate. Any parting words, message that you want to share with us?
Well, Clint, thank you. Always a pleasure, as I've shared, to be part of the Manila Times Forum. Ben, thank you. Blanca, for all the viewers out there, if you have any real estate concerns, you can call us. So thank you. We have to be agile and we have to adapt and innovate in times like this. So I guess that's the parting word. Thank you, everyone. Enjoy your
Very
lunch.
nice, Sheila. Very nice. Thank you very much. Thank you. Ben, may we have your closing summary for the final part of this
couple of
program?
words of wisdom for everybody. First of all, I'd like to thank everybody that stuck with us, and for this has been a new experience for us too. And I guess that is significant because, if you think about it, 4 months ago, nobody knew we were going to be here like this, and it affects everything and everybody. The way we all work, the way we live, the way we play, which we can't even do right now. And I think that's the biggest takeaway from what we've heard from Dr. Chua at NADA, from Sheila just now, and Mr. Moti from Pag-Ibig, is that our recovery from all of this, bearing in mind that the health concern is still a priority, but our recovery from all of this is a work in progress. We have just barely gotten started on it. We're all kind of novices at this. It's kind of comforting that the government and the private sector is trying to think ahead and developing, plans to deal with it. But I think what Sheila said there at the very end is the absolute truth to all of this is that we need to be flexible and agile and be prepared for the unknown. Because like I said, 4 months ago, this was an unknown. And here we are, but we're here and we're still making it. And I think that, with a little bit of time and hard work, we're going to make it. And so I'm very optimistic about it. And I hope that, we can hear some better news the next time we have one of these exercises. And that's my thought for today, Clink.
Thank you.
What do you have to say?
Well, I just want to thank everyone again. Sheila, thank you. Thank you to Secretary Koa and Mr. Moti of Pag-Ibig. And thank you. I just found out that our reach has now exceeded 76,000 and it's still growing. I really we should thank all of the viewers today. And for those who did not catch the presentations earlier, of course, the Manila Times will carry stories about this forum tomorrow, and I suspect in the following days. And there have been some questions also about the slides of the slide presentations of our speakers today. We shall ask those from the speakers and share them on this platform. For those of you who are still unable to get a copy of any newspaper because of the quarantine, please follow us on our website, www.manilatimes.net. We also have a digital edition, which is an exact replica of our paper. I think that's going to be the new normal. You can subscribe to that for only $2.50 per day, and the first 2 weeks is free. You get that through digitaledition.manilatimes.net. And with that, thank you again to everyone. And that concludes today's forum. Thank you, and good luck to us all.